This is the most disappointing Pokemon game of all time. No, I'm not gonna lie, for the past 5 years, you can easily pick out these certain games that are in the release lineup that have not hit players' expectations. Now, while Pokemon games have been a commercial giant for decades, and still, even the weaker titles selling out the next title, but the critics tend to be more critical of the more recent games, especially for their numerous bugs. It's pretty well known that this stuff in Scarlet and Violet when the game launched was pretty hilarious, even though it did have some enjoyable parts of the game. There's many compilations of random craziness happening, and if you were disappointed by those two games, I don't blame you. But I mean, Legends Arceus I actually really liked, as the game feels like it actually had a little bit more development time put into it, and you can really tell that Scarlet and Violet was trying to copy off of Legends Arceus' homework. Now, I wasn't too much of a fan of Sword and Shield either because of the game being really easy and the story mode having not really that much outside of DLC that you had to buy later. And I mean, I get these games are also, made for kids at the end of the day, so that's why they're always going to be easy. A lot of the trainers in the game don't even have full teams of Pokemon. That's how easy they really try to make it. They don't even Gigantamax until the very end, which is a missed opportunity. And a lot of the post game was just kind of lame if you didn't have any DLC. Or even Palworld making Nintendo angry for taking Pokemon's hype away. That was actually kind of funny though, I'm not gonna lie. But there's actually one game, or technically two, that beats them all. And this is the most disappointing Pokemon game probably in the whole series. This is that big of a mess up. And that's Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. And of course I'm gonna get right into it, but make sure to subscribe, okay? Now, if I told you someone 10 years ago one day that there was going to be a Gen 4 remake, people would go insane. A lot of people love Gen 4, especially even myself. It was a banger after banger. Gen 4 had some of the strongest critically receptive games, being Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Platinum. A lot of the spin-offs are pretty great too. Shoutouts to the Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky. It's a highly acclaimed generation. Now, it's probably also because it's part of my childhood. The games were good, and critically, they were bestsellers, and they were received really well too. And if you go on eBay, many of the games in this gen have insane resale value. So there is definitely a market for making a remake. Now, if you tell anybody, hey, we're doing this, I would buy it in an instant. Gen 4 remakes would print copies if you told somebody back in the day they were making one. And low-key, the sales of said remake probably would just be crazy. But to put in perspective, the target audience for this game, even for myself, I'm a grown man now, Pokemon Platinum is one of my favorite Pokemon games of all time. And I would put Platinum probably in the S tier with, some of my other favorites, which are, yeah, sure, ones I grew up with. People like me were made to like this game. This was for us. Now, so I'm just gonna dive right into it. This is the concept art for Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. As you can see, these were the original intentions for the Gen 4 remake back in the day. It was most likely Game Freak trying to get a feel of how the areas were going to look, as yeah, this was going to be a 3D game. And you can tell the concept art looks incredible. This is some excellent show of what they were truly aiming for the project, at least at the current time. Now, I know concept art never actually stays. Games are made to evolve, especially in development, or I guess de-evolve. A little bit of a pun there, yes I know. But it shows that they actually were shooting high for this game. Even the visuals were something that they were trying to really get down in these original documents. I would have played this Pokemon game in a second. We would have all bought this. That wasn't really where the fans' interpretations would truly go, as people were speculating as Mega Evolution could possibly return, or maybe Gigantamax for a lot of the Gen 4 Pokemon. The starters low-key have been snubbed for many generations, so them not getting a single Mega Evolution, even a regional form or anything at all, really, it's kind of sad. And considering the previous Pokemon remakes, while some people have criticized ORAS for their lack of a battle frontier, at least they gave players the Delta episode, and they gave Mega Forms to a lot of Pokemon. But we didn't even get that in this game, which is funny because back in 2014, people were disappointed with ORAS's quote-unquote lack of content. But it's funny, we were actually living in a good period back then. I would kill for a Mega Empoleon, Torterra, and Infernape. We all want that now. Mega Arceus, Mega Shaman, Mega Darkrai, Mega Palkia, Mega Dialga, Giratina, they would all go hard, but we were robbed. Nothing we really were hoping for as fans was really met. I guess our own faults for having high expectations of really the acclaimed Pokemon remake. I mean, Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver recreated 2 regions with amazing graphics, and every Pokemon in the game follows you, which is a thing that people actually beg to come back every single gen. And there was a literal Poke Walker. They went crazy with this game. The Gen 1 remake, they added the Sevi Islands, and they had some post-game content. How much content does the Gen 4 remakes have? Well, you could definitely stay tuned for the lack of content. Now, when the remakes were first announced, I was actually worried, as visually this wasn't what I was expecting at all. This was a top-down chibi art style, and it's never really been done for a Pokemon game, and some people were singing its praises. I, to this very day, don't actually like it at all. It feels very cheap. It feels like a weird kind of chibi coat of paint to the whole game, and they allow the player to move any direction, just like in ORAS. This won't cause any issues, I'm sure. A lot of people weren't expecting this art style at all. It sort of reminds some people of, like, you know, the Legend of Zelda games, while other people like myself were definitely skeptical. It is a far cry from the original artwork that they were working on back in the day, as this chibi art style is definitely a different direction to go. But there was just something unsettling about the deadpan expressions while characters looked like dolls. It took me out of the experience, to be honest. To put it in perspective, ORAS had full 3D models for the Hoenn region and the X and Y regions. So sure, maybe it would have been a hard task to do the same thing for Sinnoh, especially in the vein of Legends Arceus or even Scarlet and Violet, like some people were probably expecting, but I would even take a remake that was more similar to ORAS or Sun and Moon. Sinnoh was definitely done dirty this game, as you can sort of see the problem. Now, I would be okay if they took some development time, but it's not gonna happen. But the amount of releases that Game Freak had every single year truly held it back. I want to keep my mouth shut for that part and save it for later. It was very apparent that when the game came out, it was extremely faithful to the original, and they had nothing new to really show off for the game. No new Mega Evolutions, no Gigantamax forms, nothing at all. So it was actually less content than ORAS was being brought to the table. But even Fire Red and Leaf Green had new elements in the post-game that would try to offer some more of a gameplay experience. Yes, it has really nothing. The games are extremely faithful to the original Diamond and Pearl, which, you know, are pretty solid games, but they have some problems too, especially the ones that got fixed by Platinum. Like, for example, the lack of fire types that is basically a meme in Pokemon fandom for the yeah, there's no fire types in this game, okay? And I mean, it's hilarious that Flint, a member of the Elite Four, doesn't have a full team of fire type Pokemon. This was something that Platinum actually was known for fixing, the poor balance in a lot of the trainers. Magnetar was actually originally a post-game Pokemon, so it's really weird. Why is there a normal and water type Pokemon on an electric type gym leader's gym? I don't know. Volkner's team is really weird too. A lot of the gym leaders in Elite Four only have 3 to 4 Pokemon. The balance is like 100% of what's really important about a lot of games, but this game just has a really weird balance when it comes to team compositions. A lot of ROM hacks have better balance than this. It's kind of a weird little thing to get wrong, especially for how Platinum fixed it. There's plenty of trainers that won't have types that actually correlate for their actual team structures, and it ends up feeling weird. The small things that this game does correct is fixing Gen 4's meme of an engine, and you don't really have to deal with that. Finally, adding the Pokemon Gen 4 events and making them officially part of the game was a smart thing to do, as most people like myself just use action replays to do this stuff back in the day. Yeah, I know, I actually thought the Arceus event was actually a part of the game, and it really wasn't. But hey, there's no surprises, as the Gen 4 remake would actually fix this, and it should be noted that whatever reason these events are actually time limited in this game, so you can't actually get them anymore, which is really stupid. And also there's some optimizations to the HM system, so you don't have to use Bidoof anymore. See you, Bidoof. And Platinum can also just be completely ignored, or if you wanted this game to be like Platinum at all, it really isn't. Pokemon that get thrown in the post game are just, you're not really going to use them at all, and the Platinum gift locations are gone. So yes, to this day, the originals did not get a bunch of the new evolutions, only in the post-game, which is stupid. And as a kid, I didn't even know why Pokemon weren't really in the game until I randomly saw artwork that there was actually a lot more Pokemon in the game. But aren't these games supposed to be faithful to the original? I'm sure a lot of you are asking. Well, every remake has made changes that didn't stop Fire Red and Leaf Green from fixing Missing No and all the crazy glitches in Gen 1, or Heart Gold Soul Silver adding so much content beyond the game, and even following Pokemon, which they didn't have to go that hard, but they did. They added that into this game too, but even that has its own flaws. For whatever reason, the game balance is absolutely a huge problem of why this game has failed so badly. Unfortunately, followed a lot of the original game's flaws too. You can actually say they are not one-to-one copies of each other, even though they're trying to be. Like, for example, the EXP share from previous Pokemon games made a return. And this actually is why gym leaders are such a cakewalk. Like, seriously, look at this team loadout. 3 Pokemon on a gym leader team, and you have an an experience share with probably 6 Pokemon on your team, and you're just murdering all the water types, and you can't at least have more than 3 Pokemon. The affection bonuses have changed too for whatever reason. They actually have a lot of the same team structures, and really the minor attempts to work around this, and the fact that players are just quickly going to outlevel every single gym. And don't even get me started on the balance on the Elite Four. This is why the argument of, oh, this is a 1-to-1 copy, because there's actually a lot of flaws here that were not in the original game. But for whatever reason, they must have realized that the game was just, I don't know, F it. Now I hope you like EV training, because every single team in the Elite Four is EV trained to the gills, and they all have competitive movesets, and this was never done in any regular Pokemon game. I talked about how Sword and Shield was way too easy before, but here we are all of a sudden now it's just Smogon battles. Now imagine it even being harder for no reason whatsoever. People complain about Coliseum's backwards balance when it came to the end game, and decades later it still has a lot of the same mistakes. But heck, here's the Pokemon Gen 4 remakes making Coliseum look like a cakewalk. Seriously, if a spin-off game made almost 2 decades ago also looks better than the game that you made today, you definitely have a little bit of a problem too. I know that's more of a minor nitpick. For the OGs of Diamond and Pearl missing out on things in Platinum, well, Heart Gold, Soul Silver was known for bringing back things from Crystal to the modern day. But these games didn't even try that. It lacks a distortion world. I like the charm of Platinum's updated look, and it doesn't really have that either. Why not copy off Platinum if you're going to copy off the better version of the Gen 4 games? Another thing that was absolutely butchered is this game's lack of post-game content, because again, following Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, which, fun fact, doesn't have any Battle Frontier, and they didn't even try doing that in this game either. There's no Platinum episode, there's no DLC for this game to try to breathe new light, and they lacked several story scenes like the additional Cyrus battles or the new characters like Looker and Charon. And these tiny scenes actually enhance the whole experience for this game, but they never brought this stuff back. All there for them to take, but they just decided not to. Many of the bottom screen stuff from the original games is not ported over, so that means the Poke Tech and oh, I mean, wait, there's Pokemon that follows you, right? They did try to make this like Heart Gold, Soul Silver. The thing is, this technically could have been the same excuse for the game being so overly faithful to Diamond and Pearl, but no, they actually literally included the following Pokemon. But it's one of the most half-assed attempts at this mechanic I've ever seen. This is really weird and slow and unnecessary. There's a strange scale for each Pokemon in the game where there's just no soul when it comes to the Pokemon that follows you, and it feels like a last-minute addition, and it was rushed to just include something that people liked. Why even include it if, you know, Torterra just moves like a slug? And why are they getting the proportions wrong on many Pokemon? Like, I don't know, it's just weird. Like, I get making Torterra slow is like lore accurate, but it just doesn't make any sense in the context of the game. But they seem to create these remakes at a time when they were attempting to reinvent the wheel with Pokemon Legends Arceus. But the theory is they didn't actually want to make a strict Sinnoh remake. They clearly wanted to make something more original, which in a way I can actually sort of see that with Legends Arceus, as they definitely chose to put all hands on deck on that game. But at the same time, a remake of Diamond and Pearl would sell like hotcakes, so Game Freak went with the projected sales numbers and went with a Diamond and Pearl remake, except did have 2 other major games in development. So what do? Well, the games were outsourced to another studio, being ILCA. This studio did not have a lot of work under their belt, but for whatever reason, they were tasked with remaking these 2 games. And of course, I don't think this studio was ready to handle such a game with high expectations. They were being given something that they probably were just not really knowing how to deal with the engine, how to do this, how to do that, how to handle remaking a title that is in a high demand for Pokemon fans. And also them trying to squeeze this in Game Freak's time slot of releasing every single Pokemon game near the holidays just to try to get some epic sales figures probably led to this game being pretty rushed. And I don't think they were even ready or well equipped to really do this game. They're trying to be so loyal to Diamond and Pearl while making a weird marketing push for the game and then completely abandon the ship near the end. There's just a cheap difficulty spike because you didn't actually understand how to balance EXP share. As soon as the remake was announced, it was a sign for what was to come. How do you meet Game Freak's older expectations when it comes to creating a giant remake that has a lot of content while also being a love letter to the older title? Well, it not being from Game Freak, I think, was part of the problem, as it must have been difficult to capture the era that you weren't a part of, and especially you're not even a part of the same business at all. Let's say Valve announced Half-Life 3, but they said, hey, we're gonna give this to another studio and say, hey, why not just give them a year to develop it? There's just no expectations to the story, that existed for Platinum. There's a lack of modern day Pokemon in the gen. There was art styles that they thought were nice, but it just lacked a lot of the animations and the bigger details that could have really benefited this game. A whole lot of good game could have been possible. Yes, peak nostalgia, right? You like using the Poke Radar? Well, it breaks chains for whatever reason. It's just broken. Certain areas from Gen 4 you want to revisit? Yeah, did you like contests in the original game? Completely nuked. Pokemon contests were actually made into something that I'll never really understand what is going on and what did they do to this? Secret bases are basically crap now, and there's no point to this whatsoever. This is like a statue base or something. I don't know what they're trying to do here. It is really half-baked. And there's just a slew of bugs and glitches that didn't exist in the original games because they allowed things like the 8-way directional walking, which completely breaks some areas of the game, which is actually how a lot of the game ended up being seen as in the negative light, as it is a little bit more glitchy because of its collision areas being really odd. Like you can skip gym puzzles or just glitch through the floor and in the underground. It's nice. Or, you know, really simple things like naming a Pokemon an egg literally makes them become an egg. Okay. To think of just how weird these games are, and just they're the only Pokemon games on the Switch console to not be compatible with other games on the system. So this is really strange to say the least. Even spin-off games were compatible with Ruby and Sapphire Emerald or Fire Red Leaf Green. You can't even do simple battles with someone who, let's say, owns Legends Arceus or Scarlet and Violet. These things didn't even have a huge competitive scene and it's no surprise that Game Freak was likely to end up with a large modding community in order to try to fix this game. There's a lot of just bad decisions here. It could have been way better, but the game just didn't get the fairest shake. And I feel bad for ILCA, as years went by, people later realized that they were just thrown the job of making this game, as this wasn't really a priority for Game Freak anymore. Them clearly balancing yearly releases on their schedule was definitely not helping the company either, as to figure out, it's just there's multiple 3D open world Pokemon games they're trying to work on. So yes, there is mods out there to try to fix the problems of this game, like Pokemon Luminescent Platinum, taking the obvious approach of re-adding the Platinum content that people were clamoring for, while also keeping the art style of the game going. Definitely is leagues better than what was going on with the original game, or even the other fan projects that people have been creating, like their own spins on how to create a open world Pokemon Gen 4 remake. And I don't mean to be a jerk, but modding this game is essentially like putting lipstick on a pig, as I think there is a lot of structural problems with these games. Their art style is pretty bad and they all lack content. So anyone who's trying to mod these games and make them better, I give you credit for at least giving it a shot. I feel the best possible version of what a Gen 4 remake could have been is if they actually focused on maybe one game at the time, or maybe pushed it way back, an open world Pokemon game that like Legends Arceus, then this most likely would have been a better situation if they pushed it back and gave it more development time. Money talks, unfortunately, and those yearly sales figures, they gotta do their works. This game really just was released at a bad time. I think it did end up creating a negative critical reception, especially with Scarlet and Violet's buggy glitches when that game came out. It's a shame though that we never got what the concept art was truly representing of what these Pokemon games could have been. I guess we can only dream at this point. Pray that they don't mess up the next Pokemon game. There's a Patreon, Discord, and Instagram down below if you guys want to follow those down below. Thank you. Make sure to subscribe. Take care.